Welcome to the Seth Farbman on podcast, from startup to stock exchange.
Today we have a special guest, the next episode from VStock World headquarters. I'm pleased to welcome my good friend Jonah Meer, who's the CEO and founder of QRONS Inc., publicly traded under the ticker symbol QRON. Welcome.
Thank you, Seth, for having me.
So your company is pretty interesting to me, and I really want to try to get a better understanding, and I think anybody who's watching has seen some of your press or seen some of your LinkedIn posts. QRONS is a company that's focused on a couple different levels, all within the TBI industry. If you could just elaborate on that.
We're a preclinical biotech company with a singular focus on TBI, traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury, for those who don't know, in 2010 the CDC said it was a $76 billion problem. We think it's grossly understated. But in short, there's 50,000 people in the US die from it. There's about 250,000 people hospitalized.
Really?
And there's over 2 million emergency room visits.
When I think of TBI, or whatever that term, brain injury as a whole, you always think of the football industry. You're saying it's a lot.
It's a lot bigger, and TBI is the traumatic part, which means a penetrating brain injury. Think about car accidents, think about shootings, think about in the military. Even if you take recently the unfortunate tragedy that happened on the Southwest airline plane, that person, she died of a TBI. She had, besides traumatic to the body, but it was a traumatic brain injury.
You guys are focusing on analysis, on cure.
So right now there's
detection.
no treatment for TBI. God forbid you wind up in the hospital with a gunshot wound, you fall off your motorcycle, elderly people fall, they take you to the hospital, and you have either a penetrating injury or a dramatic shaking of the brain, and they take you to the hospital. If they open you up, all they can do really is clean you up. If there's shrapnel, they'll take out the shrapnel. If they close you, they'll send you to a rehab center. But the problem is the brain, without being scientific, it's basically a neuronal network. And when you have a TBI, the neuronal network in the brain is broken and it doesn't heal. So the neurons die. Think about, as contrast, when you get a wound, let's say you cut yourself, you put a Band-Aid on, it heals. After it heals, you're back to the way you are. In the brain, it doesn't work that way. So what we're trying to solve in the brain is two things. One is the neurons are degenerating, so we have to halt the degeneration, the damage. So one, halt it, because that's key. But two, the holy grail would be neuronal regeneration, where you actually have the neurons growing back to restore functioning capability.
Is there such a thing? Does that exist?
Does not exist.
Okay.
Does not exist. Problem is when the neurons break, you will get lost depending where in the brain the injury occurs. And people understand this. You'll get loss of motor functions. You may get loss of vision. And the typical things you've seen. Everybody follows it in sports because of concussions,
right,
which is a secondary form of TBI. And also, when you get a TBI, studies, the surveys show, as you get older, to develop neurodegenerative diseases, which is Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, etc. So right now, there is no treatment. There is no cure. What QRONS is looking for is to find a treatment slash, I wouldn't call it a treatment.
The treatment. So I want to jump in. I heard you, and really the first time that I think I heard the full scope of what you guys are doing was at a presentation that you did at NIBA, the
Yes.
National Investment Banking. And at the time you touched on the element of 3D printing. And in my mind, my naiveness is that, okay, there's science, there's bio, and there's 3D printing. It seems like you're doing something unique by combining a multifaceted approach to getting to the goal that you guys are looking for.
Correct. So at least I know you paid attention. So we take what we call a multidisciplinary approach.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're taking the latest advancements in biotech. So this will flow right into what our solution is trying to be. So the advances in biotech is CRISPR-Cas9, for those who know it, gene editing. So we're going, and so we're doing gene modification. So what we want to do is take mesenchymal stem cells, just understand they're stem cells. We're going to modify them, and then what we're doing is we're jumping over to now chemistry. So we have this joint research study we're doing with Dartmouth College, which we're expanding.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yes.
They don't just pick anybody to partner with and work on these projects.
We'd like to think that.
Okay.
So, and actually, as a matter of fact, we've made presentations. I just came back from Dartmouth, and Professor Kay, who is running the research for us, agreed to and has joined our scientific advisory board. So he fully believes in what we're doing. So, and we have, with Dartmouth, we have an option for a license on their technology. We've exercised the option, and we're negotiating the license.
Let me ask you this. So, I think that that's a very telling sign when a company brings on a real talented scientific board, management team. You're throwing around terms that are pretty impressive to me. I'm not a science guy. Is your background in technology and science, running public companies? So how did you get to this point?
My background is not scientific.
Okay.
Don't shoot me. My background was an attorney, and as well
I
as,
won't
as an
shoot you.
accountant.
You don't shoot me.
You got
Deal.
it. So
Okay.
an attorney, an accountant, business person. I ran a Wall Street brokerage firm for over a dozen years. I've been involved with public companies, both inside and outside, giving advice, and I've had a software company. And I've always had the passion to have, to start something new, our own company.
I think that's an important point, because so often we see very smart, very capable CEOs that are experts in technology and bio, but to no fault of their own, when it comes to running a public company, it's an entirely different type of education. Correct. So the fact that you understand the public markets and sort of what it takes to navigate those waters, that's got to bring a lot of value to the table.
Yes, it brings it. We're therefore very close to our investors. We care very much about the investment community. Okay. We reach out when we have a good dialogue. I think you've seen we issue press releases. We're very open to speaking to anybody.
That's great. Okay.
My partner, I'm a co-founder of the company. My partner, who I've known for 25 years, I met him. He started a software company 25 years ago in Israel. When I ran the brokerage firm, we used his services. That's where we met. This was in the old days before there was basically PCs were coming out. Okay. This is if one can believe it, there was a pre-internet age.
What?
Yeah. So this goes way, way back. And then I worked with him after I left the street. I've been a partner with him in a software company for the last 20 years.
Okay.
He was a CEO. The software company is successful. It's still around, but he decided as well to follow his passion into biotech.
And so he's based out of?
He's based out of Israel.
Out of Israel.
He's co-founder. Okay. He's the scientist in this. But I think also uniquely what he brings is he ran a successful software company for 25 years. So besides science, he also has the understanding and the feeling of a company. Now, while it was private, but again, dealing with creating product, he likes to call himself head of product, because that's what you do in a software company, and in dealing with customers and other people. So
just so if I can clarify
yes.
in my own mind, the technology, the research, product, is it coming out of Dartmouth or is it coming out of Israel?
That's a good question. And it's coming out of both. So what the stem cell research is being conducted by us in Israel. We doing research on the smart material, but in coordination with Dartmouth. We are working together with them.
Okay.
Because Professor Key brings a skill set that is unparalleled. He has filed for patent on 3D printing, which we financed. He's written numerous articles. He's talking about 4D printing now.
Wow.
So back to our solution, we're taking the stem cells, we're combining it with the smart material,
okay.
which will be implanted into the brain when the brain is open in the ER, after it's analyzed, and will be custom made, because we're going to have proprietary software. And the hope is that when it's released into the brain, not only does it stop the neuronal damage, it starts regeneration.
It sounds pretty cutting edge. Like
it's very cutting edge.
Hard to even imagine that you're putting 3D products into somebody's brain.
Yes, the short version of the solution is when you come into the trauma center or the emergency room. What typically happens in a TBI, they take a CAT scan of your brain. Then we are going to have our software analyze that CAT scan, which next to it will be a 3D printer, which will print out customized smart material for that person's TBI, combined with the stem cell and with a novel delivery system implanted into the brain.
Wow.
That's in it.
It sounds like this is something that the NFL would want to get behind, no? I mean,
absolutely.
When you think of concussion, I think of that movie with Will Smith. came out a year or two ago. But I mean, this is something that the NFL I would imagine is something that they would like to see come to fruition sooner than later.
We'd love to talk to them, and we think it's logical for the NFL to get involved with us.
Hockey league also, right?
Hockey as well. Hockey as well.
Golfers not so much.
Depends on your game.
And let me ask you this: the path to being a public company. Some clients opt to do reverse mergers. In today's day and age, the question on the table is sometimes Reg A. You decided to go self-filing, S1, 211, DTC. How have you found that process? And now that you're at the tail end of it all, looking back, do you think that was the right route?
Well, starting with the end, yes, it was the right route. I think, as an attorney, I'll say this, and I'm not giving anybody legal advice, but the reverse merger was something that was a non-starter for me. And I've seen numerous reverse mergers, and you wind up spending so much time trying to clean up the issues that are involved in a reverse merger. You wind up being involved in litigation. It can be costly, time-consuming, and you can't tell your shareholders that everything's okay.
Right.
Starting with a clean slate, all our shareholders knew they came in from day one. And in working through the clearing system, which today everybody's carefully looking at the companies, the status, particularly microcap. Every time I am asked a question, from day one, I can provide a document that says I am certified every step of the way.
Transparency is key.
I have no problem. Anything I can with confidence say. I don't say, oops, maybe there's no issue. Was I once a shell? Was there a shell status? I know each and every initial investor. I have a copy of their checks or their wires. I have every single document.
And that's what it takes. FINRA does ask to see copies of all that data in order to get the symbol.
It's a huge file. And not only FINRA, worse than FINRA can be the clearing corp, because they have exposure and they will ask more questions to their credit than FINRA. But again, I never worry because I know my documentation is clean. Now, is it somewhat difficult? Yes, but I knew going in advance, and you just keep carrying on, and you do it the right way, and there's a path.
Right. And now you get to tell your story.
Right, and if you're patient, because you're trying to become the public company, but you can still do your underlying business. And what's been beneficial to being a public company out of the get-go is a startup has several, because people, if you go to people and you want to bring them on board, and we have besides Professor K, we have other great scientists on our scientific advisory board, and we have business advisors. You can offer them the currency of a public company.
Sure.
You also, we are fully reporting, so we're not just a public company. Our financials are audited, so we're a pure open book, and it makes dealing with counterparties very easy. Any questions? Go look at the go to sec.gov and see us.
That's one thing that I have to say. I have been very impressed over the the time we've known each other, a couple of years, is that you always seem to act as if, even though in the back of your mind you recognize that it's a bit of a startup company, but you always act as if this is a $200 million company and everything has to be processed exactly correct, and all the paperwork and all the documentation and understanding all the mechanics. I've always been very impressed with the way you conduct business as if you were traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So hopefully one day you'll get there.
We'll get there. Thank you.
Is there anything coming up that you can share with us that one should be aware of?
See, now Reg FD, you have to be careful.
We'll cut it off here then. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing the updates, and we look forward to hearing great things.